Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. This week, I have an episode for you that hopefully you'll enjoy. It can be a topic that can be a little intimidating for anyone, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or just in business and an employee. I know when I was hiring and managing people, when I was an employee myself and working at a company, it was intimidating. It was tough. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I was always doing the wrong thing. I was second guessing myself all the time. And there was a full HR department and I had a manager and the whole deal, and it was still difficult. So management and hiring, from what I've heard, it's always going to be something that is just a little bit challenging. You're always going to encounter new opportunities to learn and grow. But what I will say, as an entrepreneur, I think hiring help is so critical for your own peace of mind and happiness and sanity, as well as for your growth and scalability of your business. And I'm not even saying you want to grow a big agency. I had this decision in front of me a few years ago when I was trying to decide where I wanted my business to go, and did I want to create more of an agency kind of web design spot where I had multiple developers, multiple designers and project managers, and really just grow wide and deep. And I decided I really didn't want that, but that didn't mean that I still didn't need people. So I still needed people on my team. So even if you are a team of one right now, but you would like to have a little help with blogging or just seeing your customers or some admin or social media, all of that requires hiring. And I know that we can sometimes think, well, if we're just hiring someone to help us with social media, maybe we don't need to go through a whole hiring process. Well, let me tell you, I have been there, and I think it's a good idea to put some time and intention behind your hiring process, whether you're hiring someone to help you for 5 hours a week or 40 hours a week. So what I'm going to explain to you is the process I have used over the past couple hires and over the past couple years in my business, because when I was starting out, I didn't really have a process. I was just kind of hiring people I knew or connections, and I was just doing the best I could. And it was really limiting. And sometimes I got really lucky. I think a lot of it was luck. And then what happens though is you have those lucky hires, and then you want to repeat that because it turns out, oh, actually, this is really great having some people helping me. Let me go hire some other people. But because you didn't really have a process and it was just kind of based on luck, and you had a connection with someone that was good and they ended up being a good worker, it's not a repeatable process. And then you get scared of hiring and scared of growing, and that's not good. That holds us back. So when I first was starting my business, I was doing websites myself. I was doing all of my marketing myself. Obviously, I was just a team of one. I was just getting started. But I soon discovered that I would never be able to do more than a couple websites at a time and grow my business if I didn't have people working for me. And I did what I just mentioned. I hired friends, acquaintances, people that somehow there was some kind of connection, and I found those people and brought them into the business. And it really changed the business and helped me grow, and it was amazing. But even learning how to manage those people was challenging at times, and I didn't necessarily have processes in the beginning when I was onboarding people or performance check-ins and all of those kinds of things. And it doesn't have to be crazy. A lot of the things when I was working in corporate America was very structured. You had the performance appraisal at the end of the year, and if you have full-time employees, then there are certain things you need to be doing. I don't have full-time employees at this point, so I really can't speak to what you're supposed to do as an entrepreneur, but I can definitely tell you all sorts of things when it comes to managing a lot of contractors and a lot of part-time people, because I have quite a few that I work with at this point. And what happened though, in terms of just like mistakes I've made in the past, is once I exhausted my network a little bit and really was like, okay, I need to start hiring strangers. And it's kind of the same. It's very similar to when you're getting your business started and you're going off of referrals or friends and you're growing that way, and that's great. But eventually you need to start pulling in clients that you don't know, You need to start having people that are strangers coming into the business and have some kind of repeatable, predictable process to turn those strangers into clients. Well, you need to have that same kind of process to turn strangers into really great team members for you. And I didn't have that in the beginning, and it was keeping me from growing my business and hiring people, because I was like, I don't know where I'm going to get these people from. So I guess I can't take on these projects, or I can't grow in these ways. And I'm just going to have to keep being frustrated and doing the work myself and getting overworked and burning out and all of that, because I didn't know how to find strangers and how to vet those people to be good team members, and how to onboard them to be good team members, and then how to monitor their performance and give them feedback and manage them on an ongoing basis in order to be good team members. And I'm not perfect. I'm still learning. There are still so many things that I encounter every day that are challenging for me when it comes to managing my team and hiring and all of that. But it's a work in progress. We are all growing and learning. And I just want to share what I've learned over the past couple of years with you. And so for me, I have quite a few people on my team. I have some developers that are working part-time, about 4 at this point. I have basically like a project manager, an internal tech virtual assistant who helps me with a lot of back of the house, back end things. I have someone who's helping me now with collaborations and outreach. That's been really helpful. I have someone who is helping with my social media. I have another designer who works on some projects with me, and another contractor who works on some projects with me. I also work with another group that I really don't consider them contractors, because they're just another like organization of developers that do some projects and we collaborate. So they're not in our project management system, and I'm not checking in with them and giving like performance feedback and all of that. And even I would say my social media person, and I'll get into kind of some of the ways that I differentiate the types of people that you can hire and bring in. She is not necessarily someone that I do like performance reviews and onboarding and all of that, because she came in kind of just for a very specific task. But I do have quite a few people working with me at this point. And I'm not saying that it's good to have a large team. I think the team size should be whatever is the right size for you. I know sometimes it can be like a badge of honor to be like, oh, I have a really big team. And it's like, well, that's a lot of people to manage. Now, if you can get a few people that are doing great work, then that's great. There can be some fear, of course, though, that you're relying on one person to do so many things in your business. And that's where I think documenting what that person is doing is really helpful. Keeping the lines of communication, doing check-ins to make sure that that person is happy and enjoying the work, and that you are changing the pay or changing the nature of the contract as time goes on to ensure that that relationship continues, or having a hiring process in place so you can be a little less fearful of, hey, if this person leaves, okay, it's okay. I have a process in place. I'm going to go and find someone else, instead of just holding on to people and thinking that they are this unicorn that you're never going to get back again. It is painful to lose a really great team member, but time passes, people change. It is going to happen. It does happen, and we need to be prepared for it, and we can't let that scare us from hiring people. So most of my contractors are in other countries. Not all of them, though. Some of them are US based, but I do also have contractors that I've hired from different countries. None of them are full time. Some of them are on retainers. Some of them I am paying on like flat project basis. So my social media person, I just paid her for her package, her social media package. And that is how I work with her. But then I have other contractors that are like doing our help desk for all of our maintenance clients, and I pay them on an hourly basis. They track their time in our Clockify time tracking system, and then I pay them at the end of the month based on the hours that they clock. So today, what I really want to go through is just how to help you approach hiring, because what I often hear is people, and this is myself too, I don't know where to go to find help. You know, you kind of, like I said, exhaust your friend and colleague network. And then you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to find people? Where do I find people? So we'll talk about that. maybe not knowing how to go about the process. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Also, maybe not being sure about what you actually need. And that held me back for a while in some of the roles that I had been hiring for in the past. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then also the money aspect and not being sure if you can afford it. And that was something that I struggled with when I was first starting out. I didn't think that I would be able to afford a person because I was like, well, I need all this money for myself right now. But then when I did the math of how much I value my time versus how much I could potentially be paying someone hourly to do some of the work for me, obviously not all of it. And then I saw that, oh, well, if they took that off my plate, then I could get 2 more clients or 3 more clients. And then overall, I would make more money. So I think we need to take that big picture look as well, instead of coming from a scarcity mindset, which we can still obviously not have the money and then we don't want to move forward. But then we want to think about, well, how do we get that money? What money do we need in order to comfortably feel like we can pay someone every month to support us in some way? And so that's where looking at your numbers and understanding what you're spending your money on, what your cash flow is every month, and then feeling like, okay, this is what I can spare, and this is the growth that I can expect to see after a couple months if I am now allocating these resources to this person. So don't always make the decision based on, do I have the money right now, but what's the future growth potential? Because if you look at it that way and you never invest back into your business, then you're never going to grow. So when it comes to hiring, getting help in our business, we can look at it 2 ways. So you can hire a contractor, like it's a part of your team. You're going to manage them. They're going to maybe have some processes, but you really dictate the process. You're going to say, this is how I want you to track your time. This is how I want you to organize your work. This is how we communicate. And there's pros and cons to this, right? So you are going to be on the hook to train that person a little bit more. You are going to be managing them. And so those can be some cons, but the pros are that you are getting them to be a part of your team. They're going to follow your processes. It's going to be easier to manage them. You have a little bit more control over it. Whereas if you are hiring someone who's more outsourced, then there's maybe sometimes a little less that you can dictate. But I feel like you should always advocate for your systems and your preferences, no matter who it is you're working with. But I will say someone who's part of your team can just feel a little bit more like, okay, we can change the scope of work a little bit. We can be more flexible. Whereas if you are hiring someone who has a specific service package that you are buying from them, then there's going to be a little less wiggle room because that person has figured out how many hours they're going to spend to deliver this specific product, and they're going to charge you a flat fee for that. So it's not like you can be changing the scope of that too much, because obviously that's going to expose them to spending more time and money on something that they are not able to charge you more for. So you can always negotiate and talk through those things though, and say, okay, this month I needed a little bit more, so can I pay you more for that? So that's fine too. But like I said, so a service package, this is best when it's defined. Like, I need you to post Instagram posts every month for me, and that's what you're going to do. And it's really good if you want this person to come with a process. Now, again, you can mold that process to what feels comfortable for you, but it can be really helpful, especially if you don't have a process for this and you just want someone to come in and tell you, okay, this is how we're going to do it. That's just wonderful. It's going to save you time, so you don't have to figure that out yourself. And it's just going to save you time. So I want to talk about the process that I followed for hiring contractors that are going to be part of my team. And so this isn't about service packages. I would say hiring is a loose term, but if you are going to get a coach or get someone to do your social media or do podcast pitching and they have specific service packages, I would probably, if you're doing that, try and find a few people that you can talk to and do discovery calls with them and compare the prices and have some questions that you're going to ask each of them to really make sure that they're the right fit for you. But that's less of a hiring process. That's more of just getting someone to do some kind of service for you. So let's talk through the process that I've followed for 2 years. Now, this is adapted from a course that I took, and I really did have to adapt it a lot to my business and my circumstances, which I think many of you are actually in the same boat. So this course was really helpful, but it was talking about hiring full-time employees. It was talking about hiring people in physical locations, people that are like in the same time zone that you're in. None of that applies to me. I am not hiring full-time employees. I am not hiring anyone to be in a physical location like a masseuse at a salon. And I am often not in the same place as people, not in the same time zone. So I can't be going and meeting in person with anyone. And I can't be doing a lot of like live interviews and live calls with people because I often don't overlap my time zone a whole lot with a lot of different people because I'm just traveling all around, and the people that I hire are around the world too. So we can't just be doing a lot of live stuff. And I don't have a big team to begin with. And this course was also talking about having someone else come in and do some of the interviews and all of that. I do have some suggestions for that. But when I was starting, a lot of these steps I felt like I couldn't get past. And so I want to talk you through how I then adapted this for a very small team, a remote team, and what's worked for me. Now, I will say it still takes a lot of work. And in the course, and I will link the course, it's from Stacking Your Team. The podcast is really helpful. And the course is called Your Next Best Hire. So it was a great course. I do recommend it, but you definitely have to make it work for you. They say hiring is a project, and it totally is. You need to have a project plan for it. You need to put those tasks on your list and expect that those are going to be things that you have to make time for and really dedicate. And I think it's garbage in, garbage out, or like amazingness in, amazingness out. I really approach my hiring process with the level of professionalism that I want people to feel we have at Whitney Bates and Digital Strategy. I think that they deserve to be treated with professionalism and come into a well-organized hiring process. And I think it then shows that this is the level of organization and follow through and professionalism that we expect, that we strive for, that we deliver to our clients. So the same way that you would want your customer process, your onboarding of your clients and customers to really reflect who you are as a business and be a great experience before they even become a customer, like your discovery call process and your sales process, you want it to be like a prelude to what it's like to work with you. The same thing goes with your hiring process. You want to set that expectation up front, and I'll give you some examples of what I mean by that. And you don't have to necessarily all do that by saying that. It's by how you act and how you present yourself and act throughout the hiring process. And so I'll say that this whole process that I'm talking about, I would probably give yourself, if you're doing it for the first time, probably like 6 weeks, but maybe as time goes on, maybe a month, maybe 3 weeks, depending on how much time you have, because there are steps that take time from you to do, but just that's to give you a bit of an idea as well. So the first thing you want to do is write your job description. And this can be a sticking point. And as time goes on, you're going to get better at this. But what you want to be doing is being really clear about what the role includes. So you can give an example, a list of the day-to-day tasks that would be involved. I think it's also nice to include what the typical process is that you follow for whatever it is that you're hiring them to do. I think the job description is just this opportunity to give the detail of what you do, because why not? Like, I don't understand why someone would want to hold back information and not include the detail in their job description, because, hey, I want this person who's coming and applying to be as well informed about what they're getting into and still say, hey, I would love to be a part of this, than have it be really vague and have a lot of people that are not the right fit because I just didn't want to give them enough information. So you do want to kind of think through, okay, what are the tasks that I want to take off my plate? How would this translate into a role? and maybe start looking in some Facebook groups to see if there's other roles that people are describing, or Google a little bit to just see if there is a name for that role. And if there's not, just, do your best and really just kind of describe what it is that you're looking for this person to do. You do need to think about how much you want to pay the person, how many hours you think that they are going to be working every week for you, those kinds of things. If you have specific times and work hours that you want to be sure that they're available within, you want to put all of that in there as well. And then you're going to create the application. And one of my favorite things to do in the application is to include a screening question. And for me, detail is really important. You have to identify over time, and you will, as people don't do certain things and they really bother you, those are probably the things that are really important to you. And if you are listening to this and you are a wellness professional, a dietitian or a health coach, or any kind of more of this detailed persona, you're going to agree that, detail is really important. Also, like timeliness of communication, clarity of communication, self-management, all of those things are important. But attention to detail is crucial. I want you to be able to read specifically and pay attention to the detail, and then show me that you... So I have a question that is just asking, what is the secret word? I have that secret word buried somewhere in the job description. I do say, this is the secret word, you're going to need this later. And then I have a question asking, what is the secret word? And if they don't get that right, I toss that application. It can be tough, but I get a lot of applications, and there have been a few times where I have said, but the rest, I really just want to get this going, and the rest of the people are not so good, and everything else about this application was really good. So I'm just going to not worry that they missed that secret word. And it comes back to bite me every time. So I personally, you got to stick to your screening questions. So have an application. I use my CRM, actually, Dubsado, right now for my job applications, but you could also use Airtable. I'm thinking in the future I might go to Airtable for job applications, because it's going to probably be easier to manage all the applications that come in. But you want to have that application. You want to post it somewhere. So we post the job on our website. I just embed the entire job description application from Dubsado just onto a careers page, and I just swap out that embed code depending on the job that I'm hiring for, and then I put that link into places and then post the job. Typically I post the job for 1 week. You can see how many applications you get. You do need to post it in some spots, in some good spots, so that you can get enough applications. But generally I found that like 1 week is enough. And where to post it. So Facebook groups are really great depending on what you're hiring for. If you're hiring for social media support, for example, or marketing support or virtual assistants, there's so many great Facebooks out there where you can post the job. And I do a little summary of what the job entails and give people the link, and request no DMs, because often people are DMing and just giving me detail. It's just, there's too many applications to process. So I just say, please just go to the page, read. I also put an FAQ at the bottom of the page because there are typical questions that I get. So I try to put the FAQ at the bottom of the application or the job description as well to address that. I would also say there are some paid job boards and remote job boards on PH, I think. So that's hiring in the Philippines. I've done that before. Hire My Mom is another one. Dynamite Jobs. So those are places you can go as well, but you might want to just try with Facebook and see the quality of the applicants you get from there and see how that goes first. And be prepared. Depending on what you're hiring for, you may get inundated with a lot of applications. Generally, I get about 100, 130 maybe per job posting. So it's a lot. It's a lot to sift through, and that's why the screening question is so important. So after you get the applications and it's closed down, and you can be doing this as time goes on if you want. So from day one, you're going to be getting applicants, so you can be rating them as you go and going through them, or you could wait until the end. It just depends, but it can be a bit of a slog. So maybe you want to just do it as they come in, or say devote an hour a day to just go through whatever's come in. So you're going to rate the applications. You're going to either rate them as toss because they did not passed the screening question and any other basic screening criteria you had. Good if they're pretty good, but probably not going to be a good fit for you. Better if they're pretty good, but best, you're going to rate them if you definitely want to move them forward. They are the best people for the role. And you're just going to keep rating them. You're going to then look at all of them again at the end and pick a few. And I would generally say invite your top 5 to 6 candidates to pre-screen. So that means that your best category, those are the top people. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 5 to 6. Maybe there's only 3 people in your best, but then maybe there's 3 other from your better category that are the top of your better that you want to move to pre-screen. Now, pre-screening, I have them record a little video answering just 2 basic questions to just make sure that they kind of understand the role, and I want to just hear a little bit more of their experience. So I just have 2 questions that I email them saying, hey, you've passed to the pre-screen. Congrats. Thank you so much. Please send me a quick video, like a Loom or, Vidyard screen recording of yourself answering these 2 questions. So that can be really helpful just to gauge personality and that they are not kind of full of what, because honestly, with AI these days, it can be a little frustrating to read through applications that I'm pretty sure are AI, but I just can't tell. So having them have to explain themselves a little bit on video does help with that if you're just kind of on the fence and not sure. And then I notify all the people that were toss and goods that they have not been selected. So I don't yet respond to the betters. I just respond to the tosses and goods and say, thank you so much for applying, but we have not selected you to move forward. Best of luck. So I do think that responding to people is a nice gesture. I know even large corporations don't always give the courtesy of responding to people. I think we should be better than that. So that's what I do. Then you're going to rate the pre-screens and you're going to invite the top 3 to interviews. So those pre-screens are great because they are asynchronous. They're sending you a video. You did not have to get on the phone. So we want to do that work ahead of time so that we can get to our top 3. Now, you can interview 4 if you want, however much time you have, but I would try and be as decisive as possible. So have a rating system so that you can be consistent. So however your scale is going to be, like a 1 to 5 for rating each of those pre-screens for the different questions, and then pick the ones that scored the highest, invite them to interviews. You're going to have your interview questions. So those are ones that I have. I took some of them from the course that I took, and then also just created some of my own based on the roles that I was hiring for. And you just kind of get a feel for it over time. And you do the interviews. And then after I have invited my people to the pre-screens, I'm going to notify anyone, or invited my people to the interviews, going to notify anyone who wasn't invited to a pre-screen that they were not selected. Because I hold off just a little bit, because just in case I invite 6 people to pre-screens and for some reason only 2 respond. Now, granted, that's not so good. And if those were your best people and there's really no one else, then you really should go back to the drawing board and post the job again and see if you can get more candidates. But if there were some people that you were like, oh, this was a really tough call, there are some better applicants that I just didn't pull into the pre-screen round, maybe you want to pull them in. And so you don't want to go and deny people or decline people too early if you need to kind of pull them back into the process. So that's why I wait just a little bit longer. But after you've gotten the pre-screens back, you can tell those people that you didn't invite to the pre-screen that, hey, you didn't make it through, but thank you so much. You're going to do your interviews. You're going to ask the questions. You're going to have a rating sheet, scale 1 to 5 on how they answered those questions. If you have a team member, then it is a great idea to have them also rate that interview. So you would record the interview, get the person's consent. I just tell them very casually that we're going to be recording it for internal. I'm going to have another team member also review the interview. They're helping me in the hiring process, but it's going to stay internal. Is that okay with you? Everyone's fine with that. So you're going to rate the interviews, and then you're going to invite the top 2 people to paid projects. And these paid projects should be testing a variety of skills that you need them to have on the job. For example, when I was hiring for an assistant, a virtual assistant, I had a video that was showing a process, and then I asked them to document that into an SOP, because that way it ensured that they could watch a video and then break it down into an SOP. I could see how they approached writing SOPs. Also, maybe I wanted them to be helping me respond to clients when the clients had questions about things. So I gave them a mock scenario of, hey, this happened, this client emailed about this, give a little context and say, can you please draft the email for this? Maybe I also have website work that I want them to do, and I want to test that they can debug something or fix something. And so we'll sometimes set up a mock page on the website that has some things broken on it and have that person see if they can address it and fix it and all of that. So the test project is going to depend, but generally you don't want it to be more than like 2 to 3 hours of work, and you're going to pay them for their time and pay them at whatever rate they had said that they would charge. And that's just going to help you really test them and make sure that they can actually do the things that you want them to do. And then at that point, you're going to notify anyone who wasn't invited to an interview that they were not selected. So again, we're kind of just slowing the pace a little bit on who we're notifying that they weren't selected, so that we make sure that we got a little bit further. So let's, for example, you invite your top 2 to 3 candidates to paid projects, but only 2 of them actually return the projects. Maybe you want to go back to the people you interviewed and ask one of those other people to do a paid project and bring them in. So you don't want to tell any of your interviewees that they haven't been selected yet. You just want to tell the pre-screens that weren't invited to interviews that they weren't selected. So always make sure if people are asking when they're going to be notified, make sure you give yourself enough wiggle room. It's fine. You can tell them, hey, I need a week or 2 weeks to let you know. So then you're going to get those projects back. You're going to rate them as well so that you can be objective in terms of how they did. And then you're going to offer the position to the top candidate. Once again, waiting until they accept it to notify all other candidates that they were not selected. And those emails to those folks, you can offer to give feedback. I think that's really nice and helpful, especially if you took them all the way through this process. You should know and be able to articulate why they weren't selected. And it can also just ensure that that relationship continues, because it could be that this person just wasn't as good right now, but maybe in the future you're going to need them, and keep that door open. So I think that's always really good as well, because you're going through all this process of hiring and finding people. If there are people, and I haven't been as good about this is something that I need to do better, is actually taking some of these other candidates who maybe weren't good for the specific job I was hiring for, but they could be good for something else. I really need to be better about creating that bench, that short list of people that I could reach out to if something happens or I need something in the future, because it's all of this is very similar to in your business. You're generating leads and all of that, and then you don't keep track of your leads, and sometimes it's good to go back to your leads and see if something's changed. So you spend all that time and energy collecting them, and some of them might be really good and promising. So you want to keep in touch with those people. Okay, so now you have your top person. They've accepted the job. That's great. Now you're going to onboard them with a work plan. Typically what I do is I spend the first, so I have things that I've set up now in my business. I have a document that goes over the business as a whole, who we serve, what we offer, the software that we use, who's on the team, what our goals are, what our vision is, what our values are. So that took time for me to put together. Don't feel you have to do all of that from the get-go, but now that I've used it for a couple years, it's easy for me to just update as time goes on, and then I can share that with someone and ask them to read that before we get on the phone. And then I also have a work plan that I put together that's basically just these are the initial things that you're going to be working on. This is how we're going to get you trained up on them. These are the expectations of when you're going to be trained on them. If there's someone on the team that's going to be coming in and training you on these things, when they're going to be doing that. But the first call is really just an overview and an introduction to the company and the values and all of that. And then the next call is really like, okay, this is how we like to communicate. I get them into our software. I have a list of all of the things that I need to get them access to. Often now I do add them to my Google Workspace so that they have their own email account. And also for security purposes, when and if they leave, I can just shut down that account, and that can shut down the access to anything else that they were given versus sharing a bunch of things to a personal Gmail. But either way, I have a record of all of the things that I have added them to so that I can back out of that when and if needed. And, they accept the offer. There's a contract that I have them sign, all of that. And we have that work plan. And I think another mistake that I've made in the past is that we spent way too much time training and not enough time getting them into actually doing some of the work. Now, granted, that was a role, it was a project management role, and we just kind of felt like it was just overwhelming it's like, how do you train someone on like a little piece of project management? But I think we could have done some things differently, and we spent way too long training. And then finally, when it came time for this person to actually start performing and doing the work, it became clear that it wasn't actually the right fit. So what I always like to do is ensure that we get them doing the work as soon as possible so that we can course correct, make sure that we are in the right fit here for everything and the expectations are clear, because especially in those first 30 days, that's your opportunity to really be correcting behavior or guiding them into, hey, this is how we really like to do things, or what's not clear here. After time goes on, it's a little bit harder to be that kind of give that much oversight. So I think it's really important for them to be doing the work. And, if you get hired, you want to start showing your worth. You want to start actually producing instead of just sitting here reading manuals or getting on calls and being talked to for hours. You want to do the work. So I think it's important to figure that out and start thinking about, as you're getting people in place, what are the things that they can be working on that are like smaller chunks, and really making sure that you are giving yourself the time to manage this person and train them and all of that. And then doing a 30, 60, 90-day check-in. Now, the 30-day can be a little bit more casual if you'd like. I haven't quite perfected my process yet. I do at least do the check-ins, but what I would like to do is make sure I'm clear on, okay, when are they doing self-assessments? Because I think having the person assess themselves and then me give them an assessment, and then we can compare the answers to make sure we feel we're on the same page. But at a high level, it's just checking in to see how they think things are going, what is working, what needs to be improved, and it's an opportunity for me to let them know what's working, what needs to be improved. Is there anything we need to adjust? It's that time to just kind of stop, sit back, and reflect, and really holding yourself to doing it. And again, if you're getting started, it doesn't have to be super complicated. The point is that you did it at the 30, 60, and 90 day. So that's the process. Like I said, it's a project. It's definitely a lot of steps. But I feel very confident with the people that I bring in now that I have taken the time to really ensure that they are the right people for the position. And then if it turns out they aren't, or I need to hire for a position in the future, I have a process in place. I know where to find these people. I know how to take them through a process that I have now run for multiple times. And the end result that comes out of the process is a good result. And it's not to say that it ends here. After the 90-day check-ins, you still need to be managing and supporting. But some of the things that we don't do, we don't have team calls. I don't talk regularly with most of my team members. Some of them I do, but most of them I don't have calls with. We just have like a weekly check-in, a written update that people give in our project management system. And then we'll have calls when we need, or just talk in Rike, which is our project management system, for different things. So, but you need to be keeping an eye on performance and what people need and how things are going. It's just part of management. So just to wrap up, some of the tools that I use. So I mentioned I use Dubsado. Right now I use that for applications, people applying to the position. I write the job description in like a Google Doc, but then I put it into Dubsado because I can embed the whole thing on my website. I also use Dubsado for contracts, and then I also right now use it for all the emails. So I set up like a little workflow. I wish it was less manual, but it's pretty good, where I have a little workflow in Dubsado that has a canned email to my declined people, and I can just apply that to people, and then it will send them the email and move them into another folder, so I know that they've been emailed and that their case is closed. Basically, their application is closed. I use Google Docs for the test projects. I give every applicant their own Google Doc. That's just a template that I just keep copying over for them to use and fill in and all of that. I use Google Docs for interview notes and also ratings. And if I have team members doing the ratings as well, I can share those individual docs and have the team members do the ratings. I use Acuity to schedule appointments. That's just my calendar scheduling platform, but you can use Calendly or whatever. And I use Zoom for hosting the interviews and recording them. And then, like I mentioned, Rike is our project management system, but I also use it for planning the steps and managing the whole process, and also for getting my onboarding together. So I just have a folder that has all the tasks, and it's kind of like my template. And when I'm ready to hire a new person, I just copy that whole thing over and all the tasks are in there, and then I can update them, modify them, change the dates, whatever. But at least the project plan is kind of already loosely in there. So that helps a little, or helps a lot. And then for paying people, I always have that on the first call to ask them what is their preferred method of payment. Wise is what I use for paying international folks often, also PayPal, Venmo sometimes. And if it's a US contractor, I'm still sending them a 1099 no matter what method I'm paying them through. But then if it's an international contractor, they need to fill out it might be a Ben 8. It's basically asserting that they are not a tax resident of the United States and that they are not subject to income tax, because otherwise I would need to be withholding taxes for them. So you want to make sure about that. Yeah, so that is the process. I hope this was helpful. I think, again, hiring can be really daunting, and it's definitely a process, but when you have a process that you can follow again and again, it really gives you this level of confidence that you can go and find help whenever you need it. And I think that's just like one of the critical things in growing our businesses. And starting off with contractors and part-time folks, I think is great in order to figure out what you need and get a feel for managing people. And then you can just keep growing from there. So I'd love to hear, if you have hired before, how does this process compare to what you've done? Do you have any tips or advice or things that I should consider, or maybe things that we can share with other people to help other entrepreneurs with their hiring and management? Or are you just getting started with hiring, and how does this process sound to you? Does it sound doable? Where are the parts that you're just not sure about or you're confused about? Send me a DM on Instagram at Whitney Bateson, and I would love to chat it out with you. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week.